future. There are no people in the future. No people at all. There are no people in the future. Where did all my people go? There are no people in the future. Let me try my people call. Where are all my people? Where are all my people? I guess I'll fly away now.
Hey, everybody, welcome. It is Friday, May 27th, 2022. Yes, this is Raging Chicken's Friday Politics Roundup. This is Kevin Mahoney, creator and founder of Raging Chicken. I'm here once again with my special guest host, Amy Knecht. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Each week we break down the good, the bad, and the ugly in state and national politics. Let me tell you, there has been a whole lot of ugly this week. I can't even believe that it's just been a week. We'll get into that while we polish off our idols to Moloch and Vulcan. Anyways, you can help support this show by becoming a patron for as little as $5 a month. Head on over to patreon.com/rcpress. Choose your membership level. You can also help out the show right now by heading over to our YouTube channel if you're not there already. Smash that subscribe button, like the stream for this show, and hit that notification bell so you know every time that we go live. Well, today, yeah, I guess what we're talking about. Yep, that's right. We're talking about the massacre in Texas. When is it going to end? Americans' obsession with guns has claimed more lives this past week, and Americans are fed up with the GOP's routine thought and prayers bit. Or how about this one? Harden your schools. You gotta harden the schools. How about that? Whatever. Choose your nonsense line. Crazy. And of course, the NRA is holding its convention in Texas, because of course it is. They're canceling it? Hell no. Can people bring guns into the NRA convention? Hell no. But Texas Governor Greg Abbott pulls back from the NRA. He was scheduled to be there. He canceled his in-person appearance. He's supposed to make that today. Instead, he will be attending a media briefing in Uvalde. CPAC. Yeah, that's right. Conservative Political Action Conference. The root of the rot. Right? Yes, well, what is it? Why are they having their annual conference in Hungary? Well, that should alarm you. Yep, taking like classes in Fascism 101, whatever. We're going to get Amy's take on that one, especially fringe politics are taking center stage as the GOP slides deeper down the authoritarian rabbit hole. And in case you missed it, Amy also dropped a piece on this week's horrific shooting in the Bucks County Beacon, asking what so many of us are asking right now: when are gun violence and school shootings going to end? We're going to keep on asking that question over and over again today, because this is where we're at. Well, Penridge High School students at Penridge Rise Up, those students are planning to walk out of classes on Tuesday at 1 p.m. to protest the recent elementary school shooting in Texas. People are encouraged to join in solidarity. The students are going to be walking out to the flagpole on the high school campus, but people who are from outside the school are asked to gather on 5th Street in front of the high school in support of those students walking out. I was going to say something, but I'll wait till we're in the discussion. Another segment we're going to talk about, did you hear this? This is kind of something for you. Cyril Michalenko's column at the Bucks County Courier-Times and the Intelligencer just got canceled. Yep, that's right, but if there's any, well, this is not exactly a silver lining, but it's, let's put this in the category of it's not quite what you expect. It wasn't canceled by the extreme right and all the pressure being brought by the kind of, the big money extremists, right-wing extremists in the county. Nope. But it was given the axe by the corporate heads of Knecht, which is basically the company that bought out our local newspapers. Yep, this is what happens when we corporatize and commodify our local news. Now, Biden this week, potential good news, is supposed to be ready to announce that his administration will cancel $10,000 in student debt. However, the elementary school massacre this week led Biden to delay the announcement that they were planning on for this weekend. I didn't put this in the show notes, but we should also just kind of reinforce the fact that in the wake of what happened in the Supreme Court, in the wake of what happened yet another school shooting, in the wake of what happened in Buffalo, we should just keep on reminding everybody that the Democratic Party leadership, meaning Nancy Pelosi and her cronies, right, supported Henry Cuellar in his primary against a progressive in Texas who is anti-abortion and has got an A rating from the NRA. And guess what? Looks like he's going to win that primary narrowly. Thanks a lot to Nancy Pelosi for that one. And in more like, what the hell are you doing news, the Josh Shapiro campaign actually spent more money promoting Mastriano than Mastriano did. Now, that is according to a report and analysis from the New York Times, and it was broadcast on the Daily this week. Yep, that's right, because this is the, once again, the Democratic Party centrist playbook that playing too cute by half by saying, like, hey, we're going to pick the extremist to run against because there's no way an extremist could win. Anybody remember 2016? Everybody remember that? Well, here we go. Here we go. Well, in today's last call, wait, take your book ban and shove it. Is that the title of a new occasional book series Amy and I are thinking about? Maybe. I don't know. But we'll talk a little bit about what we're reading and what we're thinking about doing for our first book and our first book discussion. Amy, you might be mad at me. I started reading. I'm sorry. For more PA Progressive Talk, tune to the Rick Smith Show's live stream at 9 p.m. Eastern. His YouTube channel, Twitter, Facebook, wherever you get your stream. And make sure you subscribe to his podcast wherever you get your podcast. And go to thericksmithshow.com for the latest across all his platforms. This reminds me, I also forgot to put this in the show notes. Today's, we're also going to have to talk a little about what happened at the PA AFL-CIO. Yes, because you remember there was a big kind of to-do there because their incoming president was accused of sexual harassment that everybody knew about. Well, guess what? He's stepping down. He's going into retirement, and as a result, the PA-AFL-CIO is not going to continue the investigation and not going to release a report on its findings. Are you freaking kidding me? Are you freaking kidding me? Anyways, forgot about that. So thank you, Rick Smith Show, for reminding me of that. And look, it's official. Season 2 of the Sisters of the Night Caucus podcast is flooding your streams. If you haven't been there already, I don't know what you're waiting for. You can find it on Anchor, Spotify, iTunes, wherever you get your podcasts. The amazing PA women stirring the political cauldron behind this podcast rock the house. And they know where the bodies are buried. Make sure to follow them on Twitter at The Night Caucus. That's at The Night Caucus on Twitter. Attention gamers, the Game Inn, that's with 2 N's. The Game Inn is a Quakertown-based black family-owned gaming store. They're friends of the show, and they've got everything from retro N64s, the latest consoles, video games for all platforms, collectibles, action figures, Funko Pops, walls of Funko Pops. And look, kids get A's on the report card. Look, I know school year's almost out, so get on over there. But they get all A's on the report card, they get a discount. Check them out on their Facebook page. Follow them on Twitter at @TheGameIn. Got a question about a game, looking for something hard to get, shoot them an email at thegameinpa@gmail.com. Special shout out, of course, goes to our Jonathan Mann, who wrote our intro song, There Are No People in the Future. Check out all his great stuff on his YouTube page and follow him on Twitter at SongADayman. That's with 2 N's, at SongADayman on Twitter. And this coming Monday, that is May 30th, hitting the end of May here, Kirsten Zolfo will be back on the show to pull the moderate mask off Representative Fitzpatrick's record. Kirsten is, of course, the PA Individual Legislative Chair and editor of the PA Member of Congress Tracking Report. It's always a good show when Kirsten is on, and time to ramp up the unmasking of Representative Brian Fitzpatrick in PA's 1st District. And look, hey, don't let Paul Martino buy our schools, folks. How about that? Don't let him buy our communities. Help us invest in progressive organizing and candidates in Bucks County and across Pennsylvania. Raging Chicken is teamed up with Levelfield to set up a truly progressive community-based PAC to invest in organizing and support local and state candidates who will fight the right, and bring the change that we need. You can check out more information, ragingchicken.levelfield.net. That's ragingchicken.levelfield.net. You can check it out, the link in today's show notes. But look, if we want a progressive future, we need progressive media. Support Pull No Punches, homegrown progressive media today. Become a patron of Raging Chicken for as little as $5 a month. Just go to patreon.com/rcpress. We're here for the fight, but we need you. Become a patron for the price of a good beer once a month. Help keep the media in the movement in the media. Become a patron for as little as $5 a month. We're going to patreon.com/rcpress today. Boy. Well, Amy, welcome back. I'm so glad you're here today.
Hi. Me too.
I think I was going to be a little bit kind of beside myself if I was going to have to kind of be doing this alone today, given what kind of week it's been.
Yeah, it's been a bit emotional. I mean, there's a lot going on, right? Like I feel like things just keep coming at everybody, right? Like there's things keep happening, preventable things as usual.
Yeah, preventable things, and now I feel like I'm stuck in this weird kind of communication loop, right? Where it's like I've been through this, Groundhog Day before. I
Yeah.
mean, as horrific as and specific and horrific as is what happened in in Texas this week, the killing of 19 kids, and and three additional people, right? Three additional people got killed. I think
I read somewhere that it was up to 21.
it's up to 20.
So I don't know if people have passed since then. I've been keeping up with the headlines. I'm trying not to get too in deep at the moment with the articles. Some of them they're very difficult to read. It's just I think I just need time to process it. And I have that ability. Unfortunately, like I don't know. Unfortunately, it's just I'm grateful that I'm not in the situation that the parents in Texas are in right now.
Oh my God, 100%. And look, I don't think it's a bad thing to not get into the weeds of of this. I mean, I know for one, like I've been following headlines and reading a little bit, but just not kind of obsessing over this. Like right now, there's this back and forth about what happened when and the police response and all this other kind of things going on. And frankly, I'm at the point where I'm like, that's a distraction at this point, right? They're important questions. I get it. But the fact that the national news media is ready to go all in on trying to figure out like when the police actually went in and did they like lie or did they give misinformation or did they give inaccurate information about when the police arrived or what they did, all that is important. I understand that. But the only thing that matters at this point, the only thing that's going to matter long term to kind of prevent this is that we're going to get serious action against kind of an all out free for all when it comes to everybody gets to kind of like, bathe in their gunpowder and kind of like stock their cupboards with AR-15s. I mean, that's the only thing that is going to kind of put a substantial dent into it at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Definitely. It's ridiculous and it's getting worse, right? Like this is getting to be such a frequent thing that people are becoming desensitized obviously to what's going on, right? That this is occurring because it's not occurring to them, as with so many other issues that are happening in our society at the moment. I don't know. I was really distraught. Like there was this crazy. So there was a post recently in one of our community pages up here, a Facebook community page for the Palisades District, and somebody put up a post for a rifle raffle. And I was appalled. I was completely appalled. Like, I mean, I don't have anything against rifling off a raffle per se necessarily. Like, right? I guess. But like the fact that it was put up like just days after this, and then it was posted to a school, like a community web page or a community page that's focused on, just the school, right, and school things. That's what I mean. Like, it doesn't matter. People are just desensitized, I think. I also think that they really don't feel as if guns are an issue whatsoever. There's always an excuse, like you're saying. And now they're going to focus on, shifting that to the police, which probably are to blame for whatever. I was hearing some of those reports, and I don't know what's completely factual at the moment and not. I'm sure there's going to be like a crazy investigation. And if they're to blame for some of this, then fine, then they're to blame. But it doesn't. Totally. It shouldn't shift that focus 100% away from the fact that this kid like walked into a school and blasted an entire classroom of fourth graders.
Yeah, and the fact that it's and how did that happen? Well, right as soon as he turned 18, he went out and was able to purchase 2 AR-15s on the spot. Right, and right after this, and he turns 18, goes by 2 AR-15s, and within a week or something, right from there, he goes in, and this is what he committed, right? And so let's say, I know we get to hear it over and over again, like people kill people, guns don't kill people, all that concept. But guess what? If on his birthday, and he walked into that store, and they were like, nope, that wouldn't have happened. Would he have still tried to commit violence? Potentially, yeah. But not with a semi-automatic weapon. I
No.
guarantee you there would not be those numbers of kids dead today. And and I saw that there was this reporter from the BBC or I'm sorry, for Sky News, who actually cornered Ted Cruz on this. I don't know if you saw this clip.
No. Ted Cruz.
Well, and he basically said, they was
No.
pushing on the question, and finally journalists, right? Again, not American journalists, but finally journalists are asking these questions. They're saying, why is it that in the United States, it is the only country in the world that this happens? Right? How, if it's not the guns, what is it? I mean, show it to me. We have other things. When there were mass shootings in other countries, they took decisive action, and guess what has not happened since then? Mass shootings in elementary schools and mass killings.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go, right? I mean, it's like, if it's not that, then what? And of course, and the reporter in that case basically, what is it about this kind of like American exceptionalism that is so horrible? And of course, that gave Ted Cruz out and say, "Oh, you're against American exceptionalism? How dare you?" And he walks away, right? But that's the question.
No, he evades every question because he's funded by the NRA. He's speaking at that conference, their annual meeting at the NRA annual
Yep.
meeting. He hasn't backed down from speaking at that, and I guess he said something to the fact, well, that's what Democrats want me to do. I'm just like, are you?
It's astonishing.
I can't stand him. I'm really thinking about opening up a second Twitter account of like just humans against Ted Cruz, because he's awful. He's such an awful human being. He really is.
Well, good, crazy. It's crazy. Well, look, Amy, let me ask you this. So, I mean, one of the things that you wrote this piece for the Beacon this week, right? And I have to say, I can't imagine it was the easiest piece to write, right? I mean, you're just talking about in the aftermath of what goes, kind of what just happened. But why did you feel it important to kind of write this piece, and how did you kind of decide that we're going to come at it? What do you, what did you want to kind of get on the page for that?
Well, I think a lot of it came back to just the longevity of this issue and how it's getting worse, right? So the first school shooting that I remember being like a big deal in the news, I was 14, and that was Columbine. And that really, that really rocked my world, right? Like, not in the fact that like I was terrified and I wouldn't go to school or anything like that. But I couldn't wrap my head around the concept of why anybody would go into a school and shoot up people, right? Like, that thought never crossed my mind. And then, I was so young, and that definitely shaped how my outlook on things. It changed my outlook, right, on bullying. It changed my outlook on mental health, at a younger age, right?
Yeah.
Like, I was becoming aware of these things. And I also witnessed, how things got worse because people were persecuted in my high school a little bit. Kids who wore trench coats to school as like whatever they were doing were now suddenly like, a threat, and you can't be around them. And it was crazy.
Mm-hmm.
It was crazy. And it just worked up into all this more fear, and the blame kept getting shifted to all of these different things. And then but I never really gave it much thought of it happening, as a frequent thing. It was just so uncommon, it just didn't happen, right? Or at least I wasn't aware, right? In my sheltered suburban white life, I was not aware of these type of situations. And it wasn't something I thought about as, I had my own children, but it's increasing. You keep hearing about it. It's like a routine thing. Nothing has changed. And I think back to it, and it struck me that I was 14 when Columbine happened, right? Like, now this is the second generation of children coming into the world where this is normal. This is like becoming a normal thing of our society. And I felt like I had to, I don't know, I just felt like I needed to write out my thoughts.
No, and I think that these stories are important. I think that, the fact that you included, Columbine and the timeline, when I was reading your piece again, there was, it kind of brought me back to these same kind of reflections. And I remember, similar to what you were talking about during Columbine, and I think a lot of the discussion was just around, oh my God, what got to this point where these kids, right, could do this, right? And I remember the reporting and the discussion. I remember reading all this stuff again around mental health questions about ostracization, what was happening in terms of bullying and all that, and then and which were all, I think, really important questions, right? I mean, really important things to have on the forefront is like what is going on that would drive these kids to that point. And while I do remember the pushback on weapons, the fact that they had semi-automatic weapons was a problem, right? I mean, that was like, whoa, what are they doing with this stuff? But I don't think it was as singular, right, of an issue in Columbine. Sandy Hook was a different thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and Sandy Hook really blew me away, right? Because as much as I was, like, I mean, obviously Sandy Hook happened in when, 2012?
Yeah, I think so.
2012, right? Yeah, so that was, years later and stuff. But the fact that that was at an elementary school, I was just like, and I don't want to say that I totally, would understand why somebody would blow up a high school, because I don't. But an elementary school, I mean, these children are very, very young, right? Like, that to me, just that blew my mind, like even more so, right? Like it just, and then it keeps happening now. It's like a thing. And the fact that, we have the Buffalo shooter, right? That happened just the other week. And the fact that he live streamed it on Twitch, a gaming service, right? Where like how many people saw it in the 2 minutes that it was up? A lot of people saw it, right? And then you can still find it, I'm sure.
Well, that's, my son told me that there were kids watching clips of it in his school, laughing about it.
Yeah, see, I don't know how you can laugh at it. I did. I mean, I looked it up. I found a clip of it. I literally, like, I was so sick. I was so sick to my stomach. I have no desire to watch it again, ever, It's just, but see, that's the type of culture that we have is with this. Like, and I was telling you before the show, like, it's this obsession with guns, right? And then on top of it, we have things that are happening in our schools, right? Like of disabling mental health resources, cutting funding for that kind of stuff. Like, it's so hard to find mental health resources. Like, people are having a hard time finding counselors right now because the market's like, there's too many people. There isn't enough people trained in that field,
Yep.
And then it is expensive on top of it. So, schools will offer it, but then you have people like up in our district who are hammering about how the mental health services are somehow indoctrinating our children and all kinds of nonsense, and I'm just like, but then they're like, our thoughts and prayers are with the victims in Uvalde. It's just like, are you serious? Like, it's hard to wrap your head around.
No, and I honestly, I cannot get my head in a place where I can even understand that mentality, where you are going to, I just saw this, it was on TikTok, right? There was this, little skit where this guy was going like, okay, we got to ban these books. We got to take them out of the other, the flip perspective. Like, why are you going to ban the books? To protect the kids. Like, okay, what are you going to do? Well, we're going to ban the word trans in our school and then pride flags. Well, why are you going to do that? To protect the kids, right? And he goes through a whole litany of things that we're facing. We're facing here in Bucks County, certainly. And then you get to the guns, like, well, so you're going to ban guns, right? Oh, no. Right? Why? Well, I just thought that banning was the solution to protecting our kids for all this stuff, that would be, oh, no. Why? So, well, because I like guns. And that was like, and that literally is the answer.
Well,
it's like,
that's what it is.
It's all it is.
And it's becoming to the point where there's no other reason. There's no other reason. There really isn't. Like, they're not stating, okay, we're gonna ban every single gun out there, right? No, they're talking about very specific guns that are causing mass carnage. Right? Nobody's coming to take your goddamn shotgun. Nobody's coming to take your rifle away from you. Like, it's not happening. But people need to be trained properly on these things. I think so. Like I said, you're trained. You have to have a particular license and train to drive the car.
Right.
Like. I could probably rattle off a whole number of other instances, like, where you have to, like, there's so many things that are so heavily regulated,
But here's the thing too, like with that, I mean, here's the thing.
Uteruses are going to be more heavily regulated than guns.
Totally. Totally. And here's the thing too, is that I always look at it like this. The one big difference between like a car or anything else that you need to have insurance for, you need to have liability for, you need to be trained in, you need a license, all that kind of stuff. You need background check, all that kind of stuff. The one difference is a car is not designed to kill people. Yeah. A car is designed to go places.
Yeah.
Right? The purpose of a car, if it's operated appropriately, it will get the person safely from one place to another. And maybe a person with other people. It's only when something goes wrong, whether it's an accident or whether it's used improperly, that damage or death occurs. A gun, especially an assault rifle, is designed to tear people's bodies apart in war.
Yeah.
So
if it is only function, that's it.
If it is used properly, it will tear bodies apart.
Yep.
And when there's an accident, the unintended bodies get torn apart. Through suicides, through having a weapon that's not secured properly in a home. For kids going up and playing with them because they're taught that guns are cool and fun. Right? I mean, that's, for me, those are the significant differences right there. All those other things that we need licenses for, that we go through background checks for, to get on a plane and all that stuff. If we're doing what is designed to do, it doesn't end up with people dead at the end of the day. The gun, especially an assault. I mean, look, if you have a hunting rifle and you're using it appropriately, right? You're going hunting, you're killing an animal, right? That's the purpose. An assault rifle is designed to kill human beings. That's the only purpose it has. It's a weapon of war. And so this is where I'm at the point now where there was a time when I was like, well, look, people, I'm like, no. I was like, those things, get them out of here. And you look at every single other instance in which, where there's been a mass shooting in other countries, right? That's been the result. When kids get killed in their schools, what happens next? We're banning assault rifles. That's the very minimum of what we're doing. And when the assault rifle ban was put in place, guess what happened? Mass killings went down. When it was allowed to expire and then people had access to those again, guess what happened? Mass shootings went up. It's a one-to-one correlation in my mind. Right? And that for me is a completely separate issue about whether or not somebody can have a handgun, right? Whether or not somebody can have a hunting rifle. Those are so far differently. And we were talking about this before the show a little bit. I was like, there's a reason why I can't have a Stinger missile in my house, right? It's like, just because I want it. Well, that's an arm. Don't I have a right to bear it? Right? I want it for personal protection because somebody might come down my street in a car that I don't like that I want to freaking blow to kingdom come. Isn't that my right? Stand my ground? There was a black guy in that car coming down my street. You damn straight I blew that shit up. Why? Because my thought was the black man bad, right? I mean, it's the same shit.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I was trying really not to rant about this today because I was like, I'm so beside myself.
It's frustrating, and that's like the purpose of what my article was really about is this it keeps happening, and it's the same routine. I mean, thoughts and prayers. We were going to church and we're going to pray for the families. It's like, well, that's great. Again, fabulous, right? What are you doing in legislation to prevent this from happening again and again and again?
Yep.
Nothing. Not a single thing. And it drives me nuts. And then we have people like, Mastriano.
Yeah, let's get into that. Yeah, go ahead.
Doug Mastriano, who advocates for arming our teachers. I don't want to send my children to school. Nobody, ever, anywhere, should have to send their kids to school worrying about having guns in the process. You know what I mean? Nobody ever. It's just ridiculous. It's ridiculous. This is a place of learning. This has never been. I don't. Why would our teachers be armed? Right? And then you have all these people on the right who talk about not politicizing matters. How is this not politicizing matters?
Right. This is what, it was interesting to see Beto O'Rourke, what he kind of basically kind of busted up, the thoughts and prayers, Governor Abbott kind of talk point, and then whatever. And then, initially there's people like, oh, I don't think this is appropriate. And the kind of white guy in the cowboy hat on stage, like, this is disgusting. Now you should come up here on this stage and think in this place and disrupt it like this for your own, blah, 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 blah. But you know what? I mean, I think, that's what needs to happen. I mean, I'm sorry. It's like these people should not be allowed to continue the gaslighting. Yeah. It's bullshit, and people are dying because of it.
Yeah.
And and it's crazy to me. It's like we're gonna privilege decorum, right? About being nice and nobody wants to be discomfortable. Who don't want to break decorum. That is like the greatest sin, right?
Yeah.
But kids being shot to death, all we can do for them is thoughts and prayers. Well, like you said, is like, Mastriano here in Pennsylvania, he gets elected governor, we're in trouble.
Yeah, I'm trying not to think about it. I'm really trying not to think about it. Like I said before, I had watched bits and pieces of his acceptance speech that I later found out was at a QAnon rally. So great.
Oh my God.
And he was terrible. It was a terrible speech. It was awful. Like it was awful. He's like, yeah, about that CRT that's gone. Like that was it. This is the guy that all these people voted for.
I'm telling you.
Bravo.
They're excited, right? This is this is white supremacy, and this is the authoritarian rule kind of moving forward, and this is we're having here. This is why. I'll talk about what in our kind of second part here. I'll talk a little bit about the Dem fails of the week, but for here, let's kind of shift gears a little bit, because I want to talk. I mean, I'm really glad that you kind of were focused in on this stuff, because I frankly did not pay as much attention to as I normally do. I used to actually sit and watch this. I'm talking about CPAC, right? That's the Conservative Political Action Conference. I think it's every year, and it's again where all the extremists come to kind of extreme. And but this year they changed it up a little bit. So Amy, why don't you take us into what you saw?
Yeah, I didn't watch any of it. God, I have to read it, right? Because like hearing it is so painful. So CPAC is it's the Conservative Political Action Committee, right? And they have annual conferences, and you get all these like big name, very conservative Republicans, obviously, who go to these things, like Ted Cruz and
Donald Trump.
Donald Trump, right? Kevin McCarthy, like just all of these people, right, who attend these things, and generally they're held in like Florida, no surprise there, or Texas, right?
Colorado, right? Yeah.
They go to these conservative strongholds, but they definitely shifted gears, and this is where this is alarming, right? Because they moved their annual conference to Hungary, right, which is designated as a non-democracy, right? It's an authoritarian regime. It's led by this like crazy nationalist Viktor Orban. He's just I'm sorry. Just the very fact that American congressional members, sitting members of Congress, would take their conference overseas, not to another democratic country, but to an authoritarian country. I don't know what else needs to be said, and that's just it. That's it. And people are like, okay, like it happened. It happened. And Trump spoke there. He sent a video. Like he wasn't there, I think, in person, but he sent and he streamed a video. He was one of the speakers, along with who else? The Guardian dropped this article about it last week, and they're talking about this guy named Zolf Bayer, and he's a known white supremacist, right? He talks about he's anti-Semitic, right? He talks about Jewish people, calling them stinking excrement.
Yep.
I mean, this is the type of people who are attending this conference, and this is where our Republican senators are at. Congressional members are at, supporters are at, the last president of the United States gave a speech to. Like I just don't see if you are still sitting at home and sitting and like thinking to yourself that the Republican Party is like not authoritarian, if they are still for democratic ideals, you are so foolish. You're so foolish. These are the leaders. These are the people that are running the party, right?
Yep.
And even if they're not there, they're being supported by other GOP members who aren't doing anything about it. This is not a fringe movement. This is it.
No, these are the people at the core, right? This is not, and this is why what it infuriates me so much when you hear folks like in the Democratic Party leadership say that what we need is a strong Republican Party. I keep on saying back, like, we've already got one. The problem is they're not like they are super strong, but they're not super strong in the kind of nice way that you want, Nancy Pelosi. They're super strong in the kind of extremism in which they're doing. Look what they've done. They've packed the courts. They've stripped away Roe v. Wade. Like, look what they've done. They've allowed a kind of whole out kind of like assault on our kind of like public infrastructure. Look what they've done, right? They've kind of like prevented investment in climate change at the point which we need it most. Look what they've done. I mean, show me how they're weak, right?
Yeah.
It's the Democrats are weak at this point.
No, they are. They are. And it's not. I always and I keep feeling right like that the I guess you would call them mainstream Democrats, right? The head of the party and stuff like Pelosi style. You know, they're always so worried about the Republicans and what they're gonna say in this bipartisan, frankly, nonsense at this point, because there is no bipartisan. It's not there. You have like what, 3 Republicans on your side? Like, I don't understand when they're gonna get it through their head that this is not gonna work out in their favor. In the end, it's not. No. It's just not.
It's not. And so to underscore some of the stuff at CPAC, this is a great lead. Yahoo News had a great lead on this. That CPAC Hungary was the GOP's ultimate racist mask off moment. Right? I can't think of a better headline for that. But so here's the first couple of paragraphs. It says, so there was a time, this is written by, let me see, Elad Noharai. It said, there was a time when I could write about the various shocking aspects of the most recent CPAC event, and it would shock and horrify. It would lead to massive protests and calls for change. But we aren't that country anymore. For example, there's the fact that a little more than a week after a young man motivated by the Great Replacement conspiracy theory murdered 10 mostly black people in cold blood, the Republican leaders and pundits at CPAC are now cementing their alliance with the leaders of a country, Hungary, which has made responding to the Great Replacement part of its guiding governmental principles. Yeah. Right? I mean, this is who they are. And these are the people, this is where the money is going in the Republican Party. This is where the organizing is going, and this is where the base is. Right? The fact is that is who the Republican Party is today. And I'm sorry if you're listening to this and you're a Republican and you're like, well, I'm not like that. Well, you've got a choice. Right? I mean, you can stay with the fascists, right? Or you can become Democrat, or like if you don't, Democrat is too like dirty for you, right? Then you be independent. You need to get the hell out of that party. Because guess what? They are not you. You kind of unicorn moderate Republicans out there? No. And your voice, right? Your voice of the kind of like, you know, well, we need to be fiscally responsive. They don't care. You've lost, you let that go by. Like, so anyways, but that, I mean, this is like crazy that they would hold it in like literally the country in Europe that is like leading the charge on a return to fascism. That's where CPAC goes.
Yeah, that news when I did one of those double takes, right? Like I read it a few times. I was like, seriously? Like this isn't like a spoof?
He's like, is this the Onion? Is this the Onion?
You know, and it was. And again, I keep finding myself shocked that like, and almost speechless, right? Because how much more of this is our government going to tolerate? Like, is our government actually tolerating this? If this had happened, right? And I don't want to hark back to World War II, right? Because that was a whole different era, right? We are totally in a whole new time frame. But
shit show, I think, is the word you're looking for. A whole new shit show.
But like, if this was to have happened in the time span, like a few, after World War II, in the immediate aftermath, even probably a good 30 years after, this would not have been tolerated. This would not have been tolerated 10 years ago, I think. And that's what this is. Like, this is this is the long-term effects, right, of campaigns against the conservative right to keep pushing farther and farther right, like keep chipping away at all those civil rights era protections that got put in place in the 60s, and then the 70s and the 80s come along and they start chipping it away, right? But like, and we're at this point, and this like, I mean, it was in the news, I guess, but like, I didn't see too much of it being made a big deal about. That concerns me a lot.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think, I have to say is like, this is where I give Chris Hayes some credit, right? On kind of All In with Chris Hayes at MSNBC. It's like, he's like probably the one person that tries to pay attention to this stuff a little bit. But, I mean, again, this is like within what, say, if you want to talk about mainstream Democrats, right? Or mainstream, just kind of like moderates, even like what they might be watching. Like, there's one space that gets it, but that's it. Right. I mean, this is something that, Cyril has talked about a lot in terms of our own backyard here in Bucks County, is where the mainstream media, the local newspapers have a blind spot for this kind of extremism. Right. The frame.
Tell me about it.
Yeah.
Tell me about it. I was so disgusted with, for a while. It's gotten slightly better. Like the Herald, the Bucks County Herald, they completely were ignoring like everything.
Nope.
Everything for COVID, like they for a while, like there was no people, there was pictures, there would have issues out where not a single person in a picture was wearing a mask at all. Like a complete disregard of her, like anything that was going on in the area.
Yep. I don't know. It's pretty nuts. I'm telling you this, it's pretty nuts. But definitely check out. We'll have a couple links for so you can just read up at what was happening in CPAC in Hungary, because it is pretty crazy. I mean, I think that some of the things that they're talking there, like I said, this year, this week, because it usually happens around this time, or like around this time, and so I'm off. I'm done with my school for the year and stuff. So usually I'll take some time to actually dig into CPAC. And, it's kind of like a measure for me. The fact that I have not watched any of CPAC or have been reading extensively about it shows you how off the rails everything is right now. Especially since they went to a fascist country to, actually, I don't want to say country. I want to say they have a fascist leadership in Hungary right now. That's where they chose to go. And again, who's a big fan of Hungary? Of course, Tucker Carlson, right? That's one of his go-to defenders. So
yeah, he did a show from there a while back. Yep. I think, and he's another one that's hard to watch. But like Hungary has been, like, they've been like the Orban government, has been criticized for a lot of similar things that are happening here, like anti-immigration, anti-LGBTQ policies, consolidation of independent institutions and media, a lot of restrictions on that kind of stuff, especially with, universities, education, and that's all. When you start restricting all of that stuff, when you start restricting information and the ability to access information, you rapidly start, it's called backsliding, right?
Yep.
Like from a democratic state into a non-democratic state. And it can happen anywhere. It's not just, this thing that's happening across the seas, obviously. So
no, 100%. I mean, I think that's the lesson that we apparently are not able to really learn. And we shall see. I mean, I'm a little bit on the dark side of things today, right? I'll fully admit that. Again, I always remind myself about the amazing work that is going on, the organizing that is going on, the people that are refusing to just stand and just let this go on by. So that continues to go on. My concern is that, this has been ignored for a long period of time. And, as someone who studies, the history of the right wing and looking at what the right wing did to get to the place that we are now, and knowing that this took 50 years of concerted effort, right, and a will, right, to invest in a particular vision of the future. And they knew for the longest time. I mean, it's really fascinating reading some of these kind of, these right-wing, think tank leaders and kind of academics and billionaires and things like this. They knew that their views were unpopular, right? They knew that they were going to lose, and they were going to lose, and they were going to lose, and they were going to lose until they won, right? Because they understood that it was going to take that kind of investment to basically turn a country away from, really, you think about the kind of popularity of, for example, the New Deal, and with all of its problems, with its racist kind of compromises at its core, with its gendered compromises at its core. I mean, we'll do all the caveats we want. But guess what? The New Deal was incredibly popular, right? And had a tremendous amount of support. Unions had a tremendous amount of support, right? We had, there was that period of time. And so the right wing knew that, well, if you're facing like 75% support for a policy, and my policy is calling, what I want is to get rid of that, that's a problem. So it's going to take time. And so we're going to build. And that's what they did. And, and one of the differences, I think, is that what we see on the right is their willingness to basically cement, to kind of coordinate a party with all of these kind of like external influences, like, think tanks and so on, like this, lots of money towards an agenda, and coordinate in a kind of particular direction over time and invest in that. Whereas the Democratic Party is really hollow, right? I mean, at its core, if you ask, well, what does the Democratic Party stand for? That's hard to do. In part because they've, we could say they stand for this issue and this issue, but they don't work on that in a concerted effort as a party. They've contracted that out to these independent organizations. Right. And again, that gives us a certain kind of vibrancy, but it also means that when we're at a place where we are now, there is not you don't have the kind of principled messaging behind a particular kind of campaign or agenda to do this. I mean, that's why Nancy Pelosi says we need the Republicans to save us, because I'm not going to do it. That's why she chastised the media for kind of not exposing Trump's lie. And the media's like, isn't that kind of your job? I mean, our job is to kind of report on this stuff. You're telling us that we should do your job? This doesn't even make sense. And Nancy Pelosi's thinking they're like baffled that the press is not going to like do the work for her. I mean, it's.
But that just shows how out of touch that the Democratic Party is. That the people that are running the Democratic Party, they are totally in a bubble, right? Like, they're so disassociated with what's really going on. Any type of real solutions, they keep tolerating people like Manchin, right? One single person can hold up votes like the way, majority rule vote. Like, I get so irritated with that because of like, just this affects millions and millions of people.
Yep.
It's not about people. It's not.
No. You don't support Henry Cuellar if it's about people.
No, you do not.
Right. No. It's about your position and your power. That's it. But anyways, in potential good news on what's happened this week, or let's say good to see news. The students at Penridge High School, under the auspices of Penridge Rise Up. I know there's a Bucks Rise Up is also happening out there. Central Bucks Rise Up. The students are planning a walkout of classes on Tuesday at 1:00, and that will be to protest these recent elementary school shootings in Texas. Let me grab something. Forgot to take this off my printer. Just so yes, at Tuesday around from 1 to 1:45, students will be walking out. Now, if you're a student at the Penridge High School, they're gonna be meeting at the flagpole and rallying at the flagpole. However, if you are a community member or you are not associated with the school, you're being asked to kind of join the protest on 5th Street, which is right in front, 5th Street in Percy, which is right in front of the high school. That's where people are going to be gathering. Fingers crossed, everything is going to be hasn't gone off the rails in my house. I will be there with my camera. I want to talk to some people about kind of why they're out there and so on. If you're going to be in the area, you can drop by and kind of show the solidarity with those students who are walking out. If you remember that the last time you had the shootings down in Florida, in Parkland, Florida, you had 225 students walk out of Penridge High School, and they become the Penridge 225, who were put in detention for a day, who continue to organize, Joan Cullen, the head of the Penridge school board, said these students were being influenced by Marxism and fascists and were going out there and were anti-American and all this. She said this publicly on Twitter. These students, there are students here now are standing up, even in a context in which, the right wing has continued to gain strength, but they're pushing back. So if you want to show up and help support those students, you could do so on 5th Street in Percy in front of the high school, and that'll be at 1 p.m. on Tuesday. So anything else to kind of add into this segment, Amy, before we take a quick break?
No, I don't think so.
No, I don't want to get down any further.
Yeah, I think that's enough ranting for one morning. So I could. This stuff is really intriguing to me. As horrible, as a lot of it is, I do find it intriguing, right? Like, especially seeing it in action. It's alarming, right? But it's also it needs to be studied. It needs to be studied. But yeah, that's enough for, I think, this morning.
Yeah, I would agree with you 100%. And I think that's how we get to know. Like, one of the things about studying, I would say, is studying the development of the right, and what they've been doing is, like, you can see, I look at that in just terms of coordination and kind of messaging and what they do as, like, I could go into that. I replayed Ted Cruz's response to that Sky News journalist, like probably a half a dozen times, probably about a dozen times, to looking at the rhetorical moves that he was making in there, because it's a really fascinating kind of, it's almost like a training. I don't know if they actually get the official training on this, but how you respond to stuff by this kind of constant diversion. I was reminded a lot of a conversation out to Coop Live this past week with Sarah Aniano, who did.
That was such a great show.
Oh, she was amazing. Yeah, she was awesome. She was awesome. Her work is just fantastic, and her latest piece, when she was kind of unpacking some of these kind of rhetorical repetitions that you get on the right, and of course that was before the elementary school shooting, the one in Texas, but we were talking for a while there about what happened in Buffalo, and it was the same kind of stuff. And you saw that in Ted Cruz responding to Sky News journalists, is like they're just looking for a hook to kind of divert, right, deny, right, or ignore, right, kind of what they do, and to see it play out so clearly, kind of once again, I thought was useful. But it's taxing too as well. But excuse me. All right, we're gonna take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk a little about some stuff in it's happening here a little bit closer to home, and then maybe we're gonna talk about Take Your Book and Shove It. How about that? All right, this is Kevin Mahoney, editor and founder of Raging Chicken. We're gonna be back right after this quick break.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1935. That was the day the United States Supreme Court unanimously declared the National Industrial Relations Act unconstitutional. The act had been passed just 2 years before as the centerpiece of Franklin Delano Roosevelt's plan to combat the Great Depression. By the time Roosevelt took office, nearly a quarter of the nation's workforce was unemployed. To combat this staggering unemployment, the act called for $3.3 billion to be spent on public works projects. It also sought to regulate industry to better promote fair competition. Businesses that adopted the act's codes could display a poster emblazoned with a blue eagle. Each poster declared, "We do our part." At first, there was positive public feedback for the plan. Hugh S. Johnson, one of the primary authors of the act, was even named Time magazine's Man of the Year for 1933. But soon, businesses began to complain about the many regulatory codes associated with the act. The act was intended as an emergency plan and was set to expire after 2 years, but it did not make it that far. The Schechter Poultry Corporation was found to be in violation of several codes. They claimed the codes were unconstitutional, and the company fought the violations all the way to the United States Supreme Court and won a unanimous decision. But for those in the labor movement, the most important part of the act was Title I, Section 7, Part A. And although the designation might sound boring, its message was powerful. It read in part that employees shall have the right to organize and bargain collectively through representatives of their own choosing. With the Act's passage, union membership grew. For example, the Amalgamated Clothing Workers Union doubled in size from 60,000 to 120,000 members.
Let me try my people call. Where are all my people? Where are all my people? I guess I'll fly away now.
Hey, welcome back. This is Kevin Mahoney again, joined by Amy Knecht here on our Friday Politics Roundup. We'll start out kind of this with a little bit of sad news, but we found out this morning that Cyril Michaleko's column at the Bucks County Courier-Times, the Intelligencer, just got canceled. And the good news is that it was not because of the pressure from the right wing. So let me just read you Cyril's statement. He put this on in his newsletter. He said, look, I did my best to keep the promise about to report local progressive voices every other week for 14 months in both the Courier-Times and the Intelligencer, but that comes to an end today. First, this wasn't the result of an organized campaign by Bucks County's far-right blob, which includes groups like Reopen Bucks, Penridge for Educational Liberty, the Proud American Patriots Network, and a gaggle of GOP MAGA digital brown shirts. Nope. They tried to repeatedly cancel me and failed, and knowing that brings a smile to my face. What actually happened is that apparently Knecht thinks it's a good idea to cut their opinion page to 1 day a week, 1 day and a limited real estate for the community to have their voices heard in a thoughtful manner, and I believe it is much more useful than venting on social media. But writing a column requires research, reflection, and revision. So they don't have the space to publish me regularly, nor are they willing to continue to pay me. He says, in the meantime, I will continue to write here, as well as in the Bucks County Beacon, the new progressive media outlet for which I'm editor-in-chief. And one thing that I've really tried to do from the start is have the editorial page there be a megaphone for local progressives. Now that the Courier-Times, or rather Knecht, is essentially muzzling community voices by severely limiting community op-eds, it seems that the Beacon is even more necessary and vital to the community than it already was, which I'll echo that 100%.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
And again, this is another one of the fallouts of this kind of media consolidation, the lack, once you've turned the news, just like everything else, into a commodity that's supposed to constantly earn their shareholders more money every single year. This is what happens, right? They look for ways of consolidating and making so that the Courier-Times and the Intelligencer and so many of these other, small newspapers that they own make them sound basically the same. You have a couple local articles, and then you'll have just kind of repackaged stuff that's, getting recycled from everywhere else. And as you've got the newsroom, and like Cyril said, you take away that space for community voices where, there's more of a demand that if you're going to engage in those spaces, like in op-eds and so on, that you can't just kind of go after people. You can't just call names. You can't be a troll. You can't threaten their lives. You actually have to make arguments, right? And those kind of spaces are fewer and far between. And so that's a really sad, but I think predictable kind of development that Knecht News basically told them above. And Cyril told me this morning, he said, look, he's like, the editors at the Courier, the Courier-Times, they were like, look, they were not happy with it. They were not happy to bring that news to Cyril. And they said, look, we were told to do this. And this is what happens. You have major corporations that are making choices that are ripping away our community voices, which is why, as Cyril says, places like Bucks County Beacon is absolutely essential, which is why, despite the fact, like, I look at what we do at Raging Chicken, and, there are weeks which we get like, hundreds and hundreds of followers and comments and engagements, and there are other weeks when we get a few dozen, right? But there's a value in keeping this moving and going. There's a value in saying, look, we have to build out this network. right? That is a principle which I, and again, I'm lucky to do this. I'm lucky to be able to do this because I've got a good union paying job, right, at a university that allows me to kind of put my resources toward this, right? Because, like, look, I mean, if it wasn't for our patrons, we probably wouldn't be doing half of what we do. But when it comes down to it, is like, this is mostly funded by yours truly, right? And that is a privilege to be able to do this. But, my hope is always that there's going to be a breaking point where we're going to be able to take it to that next level, and that we've spent the time in putting in this spade work in order to build out that infrastructure so that when something comes together, when we're able to kind of make that launch, it's not going to be starting from square one, right? I mentioned this, you're going to hear more about this in the coming weeks. Cyril and I have been back and forth on this, is that this summer we're looking maybe towards in August at some point, to have a Bucks County Progressive Media Summit, right? Probably focused primarily on Upper Bucks, which we're going to bring folks who are both interested in this project and also are doing this stuff, so that we can brainstorm about how we can actually work more effectively together, right? Because look, if what happened to Cyril's column is just, this is a case in point. We cannot rely upon these existing institutions to kind of support this work that we're doing, right? Like it or not, we're going to have to do it on our own, which means labor, it means time, and it means money, right? So I remember when I first started Raging Chicken, and especially in the podcast, when I, asking people to become patrons of the show, going to patreon.com/rcpress today, become a patron for as little as $5 a month. I could say that without reading it anymore. That was the most unnerving thing I had to do initially. I hated having to even think about asking people for money, right? Because that's not why I do this, right? And let me be clear, I get personally zero out of this, right? I don't get money I put money in. I pay to do this, right? So but the idea is that if we're going to actually have a team of people that are reporting, if we're going to have a team of people who are going to be a part about this, we have to find ways of paying people, of having paid staff, right? And in the meantime, it's going to take this kind of weird conglomeration of people trying to kind of duct tape stuff together, to be able to make sure our voices are heard. So that's a little bit of a, kind of a long commentary about it. But I mean, do you have some thoughts on that, Amy, about just kind of when you first heard that this, Cyril's column was going away?
Yeah, I mean, I heard this morning, I saw his statement about it. I think that's ridiculous. I think that, the intelligence. So it's from the Intelligencer too. Like, he's not with them. Does Gannett own both? Is that how it works? Oh, okay, I see. Yeah. So, like, I mean, I think it's a shame, right? And like I said, I was complaining about other local papers earlier in the show. And I just think, like I said, that's been my biggest complaint out of all of the local media up here. Like, it's a smaller area, right? Like, we don't have like big, huge media outlets and stuff like that, but like it's so cherry picked on what's covered, right? And then I feel like dismissing Cyril's voice out of that, because there isn't a whole lot of progressive voices, is just appeasing the people who've probably complained, right? And the people who have probably complained are the big time funders and the donors and sponsors of the papers. I mean, ultimately, that's what I would think is affecting this, right? It's affecting their bottom line, or it's been threatened too. Because Cyril has come after some pretty, high-profile people. But I agree with you, because the type of work that is being done by the progressive left, if that's what you want to call it, this is the work that the Democratic Party should have been doing all along, right? Like, this is what they should have been just doing. They should have been forming that base, right? They should have been getting out there and building up those like Democratic strongholds, going to the conservative areas and trying to flip areas, right? Like, bring something to the plate, because there's a lot of people out there who just don't know where to go or don't know where to turn to. They might not align, especially with everything with the Democratic Party, but they're certainly not on the far right? Like, what are their options? And then so I think that Cyril losing his position, is awful as that is, I think that it's going to open up a lot of doors as well, because it needs to start somewhere, right? And if the Courier-Times and the Intelligencer aren't willing to give him that platform, then Cyril's already shown that he's going to just make his own.
Right.
Right? He's going to just forge his own, and he's going to do it regardless. And that's what I think a lot of people are starting to do right now. You know, at least on I hate saying the progressive left. I just want to say like everyday people who just don't want to live under an oppressive regime.
How about that?
Right?
I'll take that.
Like, that's so radical anymore. Like, just to not be like, oh, well, I don't want my kids' choice of books limited in school is like a radical idea.
Yeah, and look, you know, one of the things that, you know, Cyril had pointed out from the get-go is he had been a critic of the Courier Times for years, right? Because the Courier Times had been platforming kind of right-wing voices, right? Kind of like moderate to right-wing voices, right? That was their whole kind of op-ed pages and stuff. And, you know, supported the podcast of right-wing stuff, you know, all this kind of thing. And so Cyril kept on saying, look, you need to have somebody on there. And finally, you know, 14 months ago, Cyril was able to kind of convince him. Okay, let's bring some balance to the pages of the Courier Times. Right? So that, you know, that's that kind of thing that's so critical that is lost. So, you know, it's like, it's not just that it's about Cyril, right? It's about wanting to have that point of exchange. And I'll have to say this, is like, look, we need spaces where, well, let me step back a little bit. When, in addition to having the, you know, the progressive voice, kind of like going to your point, right? People who just don't want to live under an oppressive regime, right? This is why we need to have spaces where like journalism can do journalism, right? Investigative journalism can do investigative journalism. And look, the Beacon, like in addition to providing spaces for, say, columns and commentary, right, which is phenomenal to see the kind of range of perspectives that come out there. They've also been doing the kind of investigative work, right, or reporting and journalism that the Courier Times, the Intelligencer won't touch, right? And this is what we found at Raging Chicken years ago. Is like we were doing stuff, we were kind of focused in on, you know, following the money, basically, is what we did a whole lot of, like actually looking at budgets and records and kind of what was happening behind the scenes in terms of politics, because the mainstream press was not doing it. And look, this is not to fault even some of the really good journalists out there, but frankly, if you're like there's one or two of you in a newsroom, there is literally only so much you can cover, right? Yeah. And so democracy needs a robust press. It needs to be able to expose and hold people accountable in power. And that doesn't mean that it means that we need to have a Democratic press and a Republican press. No, look, they're all going to have differences in their op-ed opinions, stuff like this. But frankly, when the Democrats do things that are corrupt or fucked up, like Corsico, whatever his name was, you know, hey, let me just join with Jim Worthington down at the Newtown Athletic Club and join hands together.
That was awful.
Right. I mean, those people need to be called out, right? I mean, they need to be called out and held accountable. The Democrats are, look, I grew up in New York State, right? New York State is like one of the most freaking corrupt political states like in the country. Right. And you know who the worst offenders are? They're not the Republicans, they're the Democrats. Right? I mean, seriously. I mean, because it's a strongly Democratic state. You got corruption that goes freaking layers deep, right? And guess what?
Kevin, New York has that corruption going back hundreds.
Exactly. Exactly. But guess what? Well, you know what happens in New York, though, too, as well? Like, we have like the largest number of politicians who got sent to jail. Right? Right? Didn't get slapped on the hand when they did something wrong, but got sent to jail and held accountable for what they did.
Goodness.
Right. So, I mean, you know, again, you need that. So that's what I mean about a robust press. And so, look, I mean, the corporatization of media is real. But so this is why we need places like this space to have these kind of discussions, why we need places like the Beacon that are going to be able to independently do that kind of work and to provide access for people, for a range of voices and perspectives that represent Bucks County more widely, not just the people with the money and the power. Simple.
Exactly.
Crazy. Man, I guess I'm on a freaking soapbox today. I did not think I had one around, but apparently I do today. Oh, my God. Well, a couple things I also wanted to touch on. Where I lost my notes. Here we go. Oh, yeah. One of the good things that maybe we'll see. I mean, I don't know if you're going to be holding your breath for this, Amy, or not, but
I am.
Yeah, Biden is.
I am totally.
Yeah. Well, after whatever, almost 2 years now, whatever. Biden is potentially right going to be basically canceling $10,000 of student debt per borrower. Right now, again, I want to see the proof in the pudding. I want to see whatever here. What I can say is that because they're Democrats, they can't do it easy. Right? They've got to have all these caveats and things like this to make the process difficult. Right? But so the plan is basically this. The White House latest plans, this is coming from Washington Post, what latest plans call for a limiting of debt forgiveness to Americans who have earned less than $150,000 in the previous year or less than $300 for married couples filing jointly. Right, so two of the people said. So it was unclear whether the administration will simultaneously require interest and payments to resume at the end of August when the current pause is scheduled to lapse. So there's some caveats. We got to see the details in here. But basically, look, if you're talking about, an individual who earns less than $150,000 or married couples filing jointly less than $300,000, you're going to catch a lot of people. Right, you're going to catch a lot of people with student debt are going to actually get that relief, which is a good thing. Right, it still baffles me to no end why you just don't make this a universal program. You said if you have student debt, $10,000 canceled. Because you know what you do then? You get rid of all the administrative costs. Because part of the money that is going to be put in this is going to go spent on the administration to making sure people qualify for the relief. If you just basically said, show me that you've got student debt, you get your $10,000, right? Unless, of course, you only have $5,000, then you just get it all done, How much easier would that be? And would there be a few people, right, who make a lot of money, who had student debt, who would benefit? Yes. But I would put money on the fact, and studies go and show this over and over again, right, that you will spend less money on giving those folks with a lot of money than you would on all the cost of the administration of kind of figuring out who qualifies, right? And frankly, I don't think people should be carrying student debt. So I don't care if the person is making $1 million a year. It doesn't matter to me. It literally doesn't matter. Because also, you know what? There's a very few millionaires, right? The vast majority of us are not there, right? So who the hell cares? If I have to make sure that kind of the guy who's got, who started life on the run into home base, if I had to basically he gets a shot at this too as well, fine. If it means everybody else is taken care of, okay, I can do that. I can live with that. So anyways, that's potentially good. So we shall see now.
So I hope it is. I mean, that's going to affect me. I mean, I've just racked up quite a, not like a terrible bill, but it's substantial enough. So 10,000 right off the bat, like right off the top, would be a help.
Yeah, and because what happens too is everybody who's taken student debt knows this, right? I mean, is that because if you take out $25,000, right, you are not paying back $25,000. You're paying back $25,000 plus all the interest. When you take $10,000 out of that, you're not paying back that $10,000, and you're also then not paying back the interest on that $10,000. Right. So, I mean, that's the same reason. It's the same reason if you ever have a union job and you have a contract, right? That's what you want to make sure that you're getting a pay raise in the first year of the contract, not just the fourth year of the contract. Why? Because it goes into your first year, it goes into your base pay, which means that every year after that, you're seeing that. Same thing here. If you get that $10,000 taken out, it means that you're not paying interest. You're accruing interest on that $10,000 in addition to not having to pay it. So, I mean, look, this is potentially good. Look, if anything, I look at it like this. Number one, thank God it'll give people $10,000 relief. I also think that maybe this will finally break the glass, right, on the kind of like emergency handle that they got to pull, right? Maybe this will finally like, oh, guess what? We did something popular and people liked it and the sky didn't fall. Maybe we could do other things like this too as well. So we shall see.
Well, I hope so. The Biden administration, they are probably one of the more slow-moving administrations I think that we've seen in a while. So yeah, I do hope that this, like you said, opens up the floodgates, perhaps, of like action, of doing something, of not just sitting around twiddling their thumbs and talking about it with no resolutions in sight, because people are getting really upset, right? I really just think it's starting to push a lot of people away. It's not winning them any points, and it's definitely lending to the other side. 100%.
So we shall see. So keep an eye on this. We're certainly going to be keeping an eye on this. And, we had the the folks that are working with Strike Debt, the folks that are working with the Debt Collective, they've been doing all sorts of organizing. They're going through a big push right now. So this would actually, we've got a lot of stuff coming together at this point to push to make sure that this gets done. So check that out. So one other thing I wanted to mention a little closer to home here too is that I was listening to the Daily New York Times podcast there, and I think it was yesterday's show. And I don't listen to it every single day. I kind of, when I can, I listen to it. But when things pique my interest, especially, I make a point to listen to it. And this one, they were focusing on Mastriano, right? So it was a show that really looked at Doug Mastriano. And if you remember, I think it was on last week's show. It might have been even 2 weeks ago. I was saying that, Josh Shapiro was really frustrating me as a campaign, like not just him as an individual, right? But at his campaign, about being kind of, say, too smart by half or too cute by half, by thinking that, okay, we are going to get an extreme candidate who we think we can beat, and we're going to help get that person elected so that we can face them in the general and then therefore mop the floor with them, right? Now, again, I'm making this a little bit more simplistic than it is, but this is the point. And to hear the New York Times reporting actually basically show the numbers on this, I wish I spent the time to dig up, the amount of money. But basically what they said is that the Shapiro campaign has spent more money with TV ads and advertising campaigns promoting the message of Doug Mastriano than Doug Mastriano's campaign has. Right. And now, did Josh Shapiro say, elect Doug Mastriano? No. But they gave all the Doug Mastriano talking points. Like, he's anti-abortion. He wants to do all the things the extreme right wing loves about Doug Mastriano. Josh Shapiro's campaign made sure that message got out. Right. Because their theory of the case, according to this reporting in New York Times, the theory of the case is that we want to run against somebody who's bad. Even the guy who hosts it said to the reporter, said, well, do you think that's actually going to work? Is that a good idea? Is that dangerous? The guy's like, we'll see. He said, but now what we have for sure, what we can say for sure at this point is that democracy in Pennsylvania is now on the ballot.
Yeah.
And so Josh Shapiro's campaign is running. They are playing with fire here. Right. So let's be clear. One of the things, and I don't think I fully had internalized this. So Pennsylvania, unlike most other states in the country, they do not have an elected Secretary of State, right? The Secretary of State is appointed by the governor. Why does that matter? Because the Secretary of State oversees all elections and election policy, right? So everything that is associated with ensuring, free and fair elections, right, and prosecuting cases of voter fraud and all that other kinds of stuff happens by the Secretary of State. So if Doug Mastriano wins this, Doug Mastriano has already said that he will appoint somebody that is behind Stop the Steal. And one of the things, despite the fact that this doesn't even matter, one of the things that he wants to do is decertify the election of Biden. This is crazy, crazy talk, right? Not only that, Doug Mastriano has also said that he's basically, okay, we're just going to start all over on the voter rolls. Because the voter rolls are so messed up, what we're going to do is we're just going to purge everybody and require everybody to re-register, right? And,
oh my God, you can't, that's that.
Yes.
Oh
and if you have the Secretary of State, you're appointed that person, you are now in the position to go ahead and do that. Right?
Are they going to start issuing badges to let people know who's a Democrat and who's a Republican now that we have to wear all the time?
I think it's a hammer and sickle, a Jewish star, and I think that's what they're going to go for. It's going to be on all our voter rolls. So this is they're going to oh, you're in a union. Oh, here, wear the hammer and sickle. That's going to be on your thing. Oh, what do you mean? You're a woman. Wear the bleeding baby on your ticket, right? I mean, that's what they're going to do.
There's no reason to do that. There's absolutely no reason to do vote for what? Nothing.
Because there's fraud. Because the Democrats. Remember the Democrats who control this state? Oh, wait a minute. The Republicans run things here, don't they? Oh, no, because they had a governor that was a Democrat. That was the problem.
I think, and this is another, going back to that CPAC point, this is another issue that, people need to take seriously, is that the stuff that the Republican Party is saying about the big lie and election fraud and all that, these are tactics that are used in other countries, right? In oppressive countries, in fascist countries, in authoritarian countries. Like, these are the exact tactics being used. You know, I really think everybody, look, if you haven't read it, Kevin, Stephen Levitsky wrote a book called How Democracies Die. It's not very long, but it's impactful, and it's fabulous. Like, I mean, it's fabulous in its content. It really breaks democracy down, and it really breaks down the process of how you backslide into a non-democratic regime, right? Like, it's there, and they talk about, you know, what happened in Hungary with Orban, and what happened in Venezuela, which is not a socialist country, by the way, for the record.
Just history check.
But yeah, so like, I highly recommend it if you haven't, like, for your summer reading list. It's not, I mean, it's grim, you know, but it's not very long either. So
no, it's on my list because of you. Actually, you told me about this before, and I actually, that is on my list for the summer. Absolutely, 100%. And I teach a class called Rhetoric, Democracy, and Advocacy, which we look at some of the
nice.
some of these. This is kind of, well, I think I teach that. It's going to be in the spring now. But that's the one we get a little bit more like theorizing about democracy, looking at some of this stuff. So I know we're going to read. We'll probably read like On Tyranny. That book too as well. It's another. I'm forgetting the guy's name. It's just Timothy something. Wrote a great book on tyranny, breaking down, you know, the rise of authoritarianism. What are some of the ways that that kind of moves up? Anyways, but yeah, that's definitely on my list for exactly that reason. And I thank you for that, because that's right up my alley. And I think that's, you know, it's the kind of stuff that we need to know about. Yeah,
well, and like, I had good. There's actually, like, so my political one of the professors over at Cedar Crest College, she actually is introducing a whole class on competitive authoritarianism, so, which is awesome. So she invited me to come sit in on her class next year when she teaches it. I'm excited about that.
That's awesome. That is awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we shall see, folks. And like, this is, we got Mastriano kind of basically there, and Shapiro's campaign's got its wishes. So Mastriano's also said he will go for a full abortion ban. Mastriano has also said that CRT is done, right? He's going to go after schools. I mean, this is, you know, the Shapiro campaign better be willing to go whole hog on this, because the extremism of Mastriano is not going to win the election for you, right? We should know that by now. And the fact that we, you know, as they said, this guy from the New York Times basically said, look, democracy itself is on the ballot in Pennsylvania. I don't know how else to kind of underscore that. So crazy. Well, there you have it, folks. So, Amy, why don't we kind of close out today talking a little bit about book chat?
Okay. I like books.
Yeah, well, I mean, talk a little about that, because this was kind of your idea. You kind of were kind of thinking, it's like, hey, here's you know, this should be kind of a cool thing to do, right? So what are some of the ways you're just kind of thinking about what we could do?
Well, I think so. First of all, because there's so much like bad news in the world, right? Like, I think that shifting gears a little bit, you know, focusing on maybe some different type of like book genres, sci-fi. I love science fiction, right? Like, that's something that I have gotten back into reading. I haven't had a lot of time for books that I used to read. Now that I'm done school, I'm able to focus on some different things like that are non-historical, non-political books for a change, which is really nice, actually. It's a good break for my head. But one of them, I was really excited. So this past year, a lot of people are familiar with it. It's that series that came out, The Eye of the World.
The Wheel of Time,
Sorry, The Wheel of Time. Yeah,
yeah.
The Wheel of Time. The first book is The Eye of the World. So Kevin and I were talking about doing like kind of like a rundown, right? Like, we're going to read the book, because him and I both have a copy of it, and then kind of do a comparative analysis between that and the series.
Yeah, I think it'd be
totally
fun. It's totally fun. So we have, you know, in full, and then we also toyed around with like, okay, you know, if this kind of goes off well and stuff like this, maybe we'll find some spaces where we could kind of open up some, you know, get some additional books, and maybe have folks from the community kind of join in for some of this stuff, to make, you know, to make the recording available kind of afterwards. It just could be, you know, like that space of doing, you know, the space of joy, if you will, but, you know, kind of also some really cool stuff. And, you know, again, you're talking about me and Amy here, so you're not talking about, you know, we're just going to read like horrible trash stuff. I mean, the Wheel of Time is interesting, because of, there are all these issues of kind of gender and power and all this stuff that run through these series. And that's one of the reasons why I love science fiction, good science fiction, which tends to kind of like, pull on threads of our existing kind of society and kind of extract them out into the kind of future or the past, if it's kind of more on a fantasy end. So, I mean, it's really kind of cool the discussions that we can look at. And so I have to, as a little preview. So I just read this book called The Bone Shard's Daughter, which I think we got to put it on the list, Amy.
Okay. I'll give it a shot. I have not delved into that one.
It is, let me tell you why I think this would be so cool. Now we won't be able to do a comparative stuff because as of yet, there's no series on it. But what first got me to read this book, Andrea Stewart is her name, who wrote the book, the series. I'm also just starting the second book in that series too as well. This is the great thing about summers is that I can do some more of this stuff, read more. But and what got me to pick up this book up is that it's kind of set in a time which I guess it would be classified as fantasy, right? But it's more of a kind of it draws its traditions more from, say, like Japanese and kind of island cultures, right? As kind of ways that looks at kind of like emperors and imperial kind of dynasties and dynastic stuff. It's set on these series of islands that move. But and the most interesting thing apart about it is that gender identity is sewn all throughout this stuff, but it's done this in such a way that, first of all, sometimes when you're introduced to a character, you don't know what their gender is, right? And there's other times where relationships between two women or between two men are just as normalized as every other kind of relationship. So it's just sewn into the fabric of the book in such a way that you're reading a book where like gender discipline is not the organizing paradigm, right? Is that, and it's fascinating to walk away from that, especially in our current environment, which they're trying to crack down and kind of discipline gender once again, right? Discipline people into specific gender norms. And instead you've got this much more rich dynamic of, relationships with people. But it's not done in the way that is like, this is about that, right? It's about this story, right?
Yeah.
And so it's just a fascinating book. And the more I move away from that book, the more impressed I am with it. I mean, it's been that kind of book. It's on my mind all the time. So it's really interesting. Right. So
yeah, we can totally put it on the list.
Yeah.
Definitely. I love science fiction. Was one of the first, the first kind of books I ever started reading were historical, like actual books that I picked out, for myself really was, more historical books. Go figure. But then also science fiction, right? Like I have read so much. I'm a huge Tolkien fan. I read Tolkien when I was 13, so I was, I've read so many different types of books and stuff. And I love the story, because it does, a lot of times, in science fiction, things are normalized that aren't normalized here, or that weren't normalized here, right? Anything was possible. And I think that is so important for people and for young children to read these type of genres, because it allows minds to kind of think outside of the normal box that they're conditioned to think in, right? It doesn't matter. It's not real, so to say, right? You can start thinking. And when you start thinking about that type of stuff, I think as a small child, I think it allows for a much more open-minded individual, and that's important because science fiction also engages a realm of different academics. You have philosophy in there, which I think is incredibly important in society. You have politics, you have race, you have gender, you have class, you have all of it, and a lot of times it is reorganized into a structure that is not what we live in. And I think that's a good thing. I think it's a good way of not getting into, I don't know, just a stagnant culture, right? If you want to call it.
Yeah, absolutely. He's one of my favorite sci-fi authors is Kim Stanley Robinson, and he wrote the Mars Trilogy, which is, in my view, is I'm not alone in this. That it is the best kind of Mars science fiction that's out there. It is.
I've never heard of this one.
Oh, Kim Stanley. It's Red Mars, Blue Mars, Green Mars is the trilogy.
Oh, fabulous! More
It
to add
is.
to my list.
It is. Oh, maybe we should even put that on, because I'm telling you,
Yeah?
I've read this series now probably 5-6 times. I mean, it's like it is the Kim Stanley Robinson basically says, or let's put it this way: Red Mars, Green Mars, Blue Mars. That series, it starts off like I was talking about. Take these threads of our current history and projecting them into the future. So it starts off from globalization and the corporatization of things, the privatization of all this stuff, and those tendencies are rich, obviously, in our world right now. Neoliberalism, all this other kinds of stuff, and it basically carries those through. Right. But it doesn't carry just those through. It carries with all these other competing tendencies too as well. So you get these kind of like radical anarchist traditions. You get these kind of socialist traditions. You get these ecological traditions and resistances that are carried through into the colonization, or I shouldn't say the colonization, the settlement of Mars. Right. And the development and rethinking of what kind of society is going to be set up there. At the same time, it's always materially tied to Earth. Right, precisely because Earth is still the colonial power, if you will, right? And so you get
that's what they are now. It's
totally,
a whole planet.
and so you get this dynamic of like of colonization, of capitalism, of global capitalism, of free market capitalism, but then also these all sorts of resistances that ask you to imagine other possibilities, kind of what you're saying. Right. And so the effect for me is always like, it's like, holy crap. It's like, for all this, all the theory I've read in my life, all the kind of like material kind of like histories and stuff, here it is playing itself out in this narrative, in like this amazingly written narrative about the future that allows you to see, for me at least, allows you to see the present in a different way. Right. It can help denaturalize the world we're in now, as saying this isn't the only possibility, but I love it.
Sounds awesome. It sounds fascinating. I haven't, like you said, I just started reading some more science fiction. I just picked up some, not just recently, but I had read some Octavia Butler, who I had never even known about. Yeah, I never knew that there was women sci-fi writers as a teenager so much. The closest I got was Anne Rice. Which she's an incredible author, by the way. So she just passed not too long ago.
I know. Well,
yeah.
And she was named for it was the Octavia Butler crater that the new was it the Perseverance rover that just landed on that crater that they're exploring for signs of life. They named it after her.
That.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fabulous.
Yep.
I love her stuff. Her work really, like, I lived in that world for a long time as a teenager, so.
Yeah, I want to get before I guess I have to. I'm just spacing her name right now. If you want to read other women sci-fi writers, some of the best ones. Oh my God, it's let's see. Please give me her name. Well, Ursula Le Guin is amazing too as well. Ursula Le Guin, but oh my God, it's killing me. I can't remember her name. She's relatively young too. She's
Is she?
Oh my God, what's it called? I know. The Obelisk Gate is one of her books. Obelisk. I'm sorry. This is just me and Amy talking. Oh yeah. Here you go. Emily, thank you. N.K. Jemisin.
Oh, okay.
N as in Nancy. N.K. Jemisin. Jemisin. Yes, it's the Broken Earth trilogy. Thank you so much, Emily. I just my brain is literally fried. It is so freaking good.
Yeah.
It is amazing, and she's a black woman, and race politics are kind of all imbued kind of throughout here.
Nice.
But again, in the same way as the best science fiction writers do, is like race is absolutely central to understanding, and one of the critical things that go. Yep. But it's not like it's not the preachy political text which says this is we're going to tell you about. It's all imbued into ask you to think about this stuff, but it's fantastic.
Awesome. I'm so excited. And I heard you say earlier you had started reading The Eye of the World, the first book.
I have. So I couldn't. I was done with.
How many chapters did you get through? I've read the first couple of chapters previously. I need to brush up.
14.
That's great.
But it's a very, very big book.
Yeah, it is. It's thick. It is definitely a thick book. I'll have to catch up. I was planning on sitting down this weekend and this week, and starting to read some of the chapters. Also, in brushing up on the series too.
Yeah, well, let's look. And when you say I'll have to catch up, the last thing we want this to be is stressful. So let's be clear about that.
No, it'll be fine. Like I said, I've read quite a bit of the book already. I think I stopped about maybe halfway through, just because I started reading other things. I had no idea that like this book that I had sitting around in my library, and then like they made this series about it, and I'm like, that sounds familiar. I'm like, I read a book kind of like that, and I was like, oh. Because my book just says Eye of the World. It doesn't say Wheel of Time or any of that stuff. So
yeah, and I guess there's like 11 books of the series or something like this. I mean, it's crazy. Yeah, I know. It's funny. I had never heard. I mean, I've been reading sci-fi for a long time, and I have never even heard. Was it Robert Johnson? Is it Robert Jordan?
Robert Jordan. No, I've never heard of him either. It's not at all. And and I'm surprised because I read the entire Game of Thrones. So. Yep. Yeah. Which this kind of reminds me of. This kind of reminds me a lot of, like, it's got a very Game of Thrones like essence to it, I think, in some ways, and then it's like also a mashup of like other science fiction, maybe of like Tolkien a little bit, you know, like there's so many themes I think that I've come across in other books, so it's interesting. Yeah,
I'm gonna be I have never read any of it until now, and it's actually really interesting. Anybody who wants to read along with us, right? You know, just here's my fair warning, my heads up for it is that the the first few it takes a while just to kind of get into that if you are not a fan of detail, because one thing Robert Jordan is very good about is describing everything that is on the freaking table, right? You know, it's like seriously, it's like
he's like Mitchner.
Yeah, and it's like and I said this to my son because my son's a big reader and so is my daughter, and then I said, well, look, there's the one thing they probably should have done. There's this, and the version I have, I don't know if this is in all the versions, but the version I have has got like this thing. It's called like The Before or something like that, or, you know, the earlier days. I wish I had my book with me, but
it's called The Before. Do they have is it the prologue?
It's before the prologue. It's before, yes.
Prologue, sorry.
Yeah, there was something before the prologue. Do you have anything before that?
No, the first thing I have is the prologue, and it talks about Dragon Mount.
Okay, no, there's in this one,
nope.
And this one has got something that's called, you know, I can't, it's something like the before, or like what happened before, something like this, and it takes place, I guess, like a couple decades before, or a decade or something before the book actually begins, and it's like you're getting all this detail and all this particular detail. I wish they had kind of not started with that in this version, just because it was hard to get through.
I don't think, yeah, my version's pretty old. It's from 1990. So I think it's from like the first year the book was released.
Yeah,
so
I just bought mine now. Yeah. Yeah. So anyways, and it's like, so if anybody's going to read it, just know that it's, it'll, the first couple chapters might be a little bit slow going, but I promise you it gets better. And I also have to say that, and I'm not going to say details in this because this is what our show will be about. But there are significant differences between the book and the series. And I have to say that there are some things that I'm seeing already that I think the series did better than the book. So that's my little teaser for for now.
Oh, I don't know. I can't wait. I already have, like, I started when I started watching the series, I was like, I don't know.
Well, yeah, and we will get into that. So if you want to do that's something to look forward to. Amy and I will figure out like when we want to do that, given all our schedules and all those other kinds of stuff. But that's something to look forward to for everybody. Something good for the summer. I really love this idea. Amy, thank you for the idea. I think this is freaking awesome.
I love books. Like, yeah. I think they're my favorite. They're some of my favorite things. So, and they've always been that way. Like, it's always been that way. I've had a love of reading since I began to read. So
yeah, I love every once in a while getting the picture drop of like just like the back seat of your car with a load of books in it.
Well, there's a particular place that I go to. I don't want to give it all away and everybody run to it and buy up all the books. But it's cute. I have my own little collection, and I collect particular things, not really books of value other than just literary content. And especially now with all the hubbub going on about banned books and stuff, I am trying to stock my own library with things that I think are important to read.
Yeah.
If anybody wants a cheap way to get books, by the way, libraries often will sell books for like a quarter or $1, and they just a lot of times get rid of old copies. I've picked up a ton from the Bucks County libraries
yep.
that way too, right? And that's a good way to do it. So, yeah.
Fantastic. All right, cool. Well, hey, anything else for the good of the order? I think this is a good place, a happy place to kind of close out the show for. But
definitely, I think so.
Oh, cool. Well, Amy, thank you once again for kind of being back here, and I'll keep on bugging you to come back as much as I can get you back here. This is fantastic. It's a great way to kind of close out the week, and I know that everybody loves to have you on too as well. So
Awesome.
Thanks for being on once again.
Here.
Yeah, wonderful. All right, everybody. Hey, have yourself a great weekend. I know we've got some storms that are coming through here in kind of the eastern Pennsylvania area, so not quite yet. So internet's holding out for now. But have a great weekend. Have a great week ahead, and do try to find those spaces where that are going to nurture you, to take care of yourself too as well, because we have got a long slog of organizing and work ahead of us. So in the midst of, we got to find those spaces of joy and hope. So there you go. Amy, have a great weekend.
You too.
Yeah. Well, we'll see you on the interwebs. All right. This is Kevin Mahoney, editor and founder of Raging Chicken. Thank you all for, whoa, that came in really loud. Thank you all for joining us here. Sorry, wait, I got the wrong thing. Here we go. That's what I wanted. My bad. This is what happens when my brain is fried. Anyways, thank you for joining us, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. You can help support this show by going to patreon.com/rcpress. I'm out of here. See ya!